Nikki, tell me, Nikki, don't be afraid to hurt my feelings. Tell me what you want me to be, how you want me to be.
I can be that. I can be anything.
You tell me, Nikki.
A Woman Under the Influence is the film that came out in 1974 that's written and directed by John Cassavetes. So, A Woman Under the Influence was this week's Patron poll winner, and if you'd like to become a patron and vote on these bi-weekly polls, $1 a month on Patreon will grant you access to those. $5 a month will grant you access to the Discord, where you can then chat with other Kino Lords like yourself and I, every day of every hour of every week of every second. You'll be able to be a part of movie nights that we host every now and again. We're actually going to have a movie night tonight. We're going to be watching Jacques Tati's Playtime, so I'm highly looking forward to that. But you'll also be able to be a part of every Saturday night's voice chat, where we discuss the weekly blind recommendation, and it's just a whole lot of fun. If you're somebody that really loves the art of filmmaking and just loves discussing film with other people, the Misfit Pond Discord is the place to be. But when it comes to A Woman Under the Influence, I kind of have to give a huge shout out to one of my longtime subscribers and patrons that goes by the name of Pain Raven, because this is a guy that's loved John Cassavetes as a filmmaker for quite some time. And this is my first John Cassavetes film, and I think he's going to be really pleased to hear that I loved A Woman Under the Influence. This film is brilliant, it's tragic, it's heartbreaking, it's beautifully acted, and it's also an incredibly important film. This is a film that does tackle the societal and human issue of mental illness. And it's something that we struggled with horrendously back in the day when this film came out, and we still horrendously struggle with it now. But let me start off by tackling the overall style of this film. In terms of its aesthetic approach and stylistic presentation, the vast majority of this film, in terms of its cinematography, is incredibly close up to all the characters. And it kind of took me a little bit to get used to that, but once the characters start getting established and the conflicts start unfolding, I really dug the stylistic choice of having the camera work be really up close to all the characters, because this is a film that, as I mentioned at the very beginning, is emotional and there's so much conflict going on, and I feel like the camera work that's really up close to everybody makes it feel incredibly personal and allows you to feel more intimate with these characters in the sense that you feel like you are going through these incredibly traumatic and just problematic events that are happening within their family. And also, thanks to Pain Raven, I knew ahead of time that John Cassavetes was a filmmaker that allowed his actors to do a lot of improvisational stuff. He gave his actors a lot of free range to kind of experiment and improvise with the dialogue. And even if I didn't know that beforehand, you can kind of tell that's the case. But even though at times you can tell that this is perhaps improv, for the vast majority of it, I thought it felt incredibly natural and realistic. I think there's something to improv that, when done well, can yield such natural and authentic pieces of dialogue and interactions between the characters. And I remember John Waters, I watched an interview where John Waters was being asked about improv, and he said something that I don't think I necessarily agree with, which was that if you can notice improvisational dialogue, then it's bad. I don't think that's entirely true. The only reason why I suggested that I would be able to tell it was improvisational, despite me having that prior knowledge, was because it did feel natural and it did feel genuine. And I think that's a plus. Like, just because you can notice something is perhaps improvisational doesn't really mean that it's bad. But now it's time to talk about the most obvious thing about this film, which is the fact that Gena Rowlands, the actress that plays the main character Mabel in this film, gives one of the best performances that I've ever seen from a lead actress. Ever. She's able to embody a character that is so complex and so incredibly eccentric, and just the way that she's able to express the tiny little nuances of her behavior and the tiny little emotional cues of her character is just beyond talented. Gena Rowlands in this film is something else, and I'm telling you, I'm not overselling it. She is absolutely brilliant in this film, and is honestly the biggest reason why I think this film is so effective. Even though the filmmaking behind this film is good, it's really her performance that elevates this to a whole new level and makes it so emotionally effective and unforgettable. I mean, I could go on all day just praising her acting ability in this film and the way that she's just embodying this character. But yeah, she is out of this world fantastic in this film. Peter Falk, the one that plays her husband, he's also fantastic in this movie. He definitely plays a different kind of character, which a lot of people are going to see as a horrible person. And that's totally fair. But I think his character is more complex. Like, even though I don't think he's really a good husband, and though he's clearly abusive, there's no denying that, I feel like he's much more complex than just completely demonizing him as this monster. It honestly feels so insulting to even label Gena Rowlands' character Mabel as having a mental illness, because yeah, she is incredibly eccentric and doesn't represent the conventional and normal behavior, but you can tell that she's mostly harmless. She's simply just being herself, and even though she is forgetful of things that should be quite obvious, she really is somebody that almost seems like she just wants to enjoy life and be who she is. But this is a film where I think beautifully demonstrates how society and the people around her have completely failed her. And it's not that everybody is terrible and that's why she's having to go through some tragic metamorphosis in terms of her character. It's just that people and also society are just ignorant in terms of knowing how to deal with somebody who is like this. And it's everybody's ignorance that totally exacerbates her situation. Because there are numerous scenes in this film that are quite long sequences. I mean, these sequences go on for at least 15 to 20 minutes, possibly even longer. There's this one really long sequence that happens in, I believe, the middle of the film that is perhaps the most heartbreaking and one of the more tragic moments in the film. But it's basically the segment where our main character, Mabel, is apparently just kind of going hysterical and is kind of being pushed to the edge of just being a complete maniac. And it's completely unfair to her because she's only getting this hysterical and acting this maniacal because of all the pressures and all the judgment that is kind of squeezing her into a tight corner to where she doesn't really know what to do but to lash out. And it's just quite unfortunate. It's, again, I've used the word heartbreaking many times in this review, but it's really the perfect word to sum up how I felt during this film. But there are some characters in this movie that I do think are just straight up not good people. Like, they have bad intentions all around. One of them being the character of Peter Falk's mother. I think her character frustrated me more than any other character in this film because you can tell that all of her intentions come from just having a lot of resentment to Mabel's character, and she's not interested at all at helping her or trying to allow her mental state to progress in any positive way. And there's also an excellent scene that happens in the third act of this film, basically the last 15 minutes or so of this film. And without spoiling it, it's basically a scene where Mabel kind of confronts her dad with something that she's been wanting him to do all her life. And not only is that scene just so emotional and, again, heartbreaking, but it's also a scene that I feel like is trying to inform the audience about how the lack of a proper father figure, or perhaps even abusive upbringing from a father figure, can, again, exacerbate her mental well-being. It's one of those scenes that just feel like a cry for help, and it still feels like nobody around her is truly listening. So yeah, incredibly emotional film. There's a nice handful of moments in this film that got me incredibly watery-eyed, and I just think it's beautifully acted. Gena Rowlands absolutely kills it in this film. One of the best female performances I've ever seen in a film. But even though I really love this film, there were a couple things that I wasn't quite huge on. And the first one being the child actors. And there were just some moments where their line delivery is so clearly a line delivery, and it doesn't even seem like they're trying to embody an emotion at all. And I understand they're child actors, but just because they're child actors doesn't mean that you can completely give them a pass. They were definitely the flattest characters and the flattest performances in this film. Also, some of the editing here and there felt a bit jarring, because 1 second one character is far away from a particular character, and through one jump cut, they're right next to them. And there are moments like that to where moments of action felt really choppy. And again, like, John Cassavetes is an example of somebody who did make films independently, or at least that's what I heard. So I can understand, some of his films being rough around the edges, but that was something that was definitely noticeable when I was watching the film. And even though I think the long sequences in this film are incredibly impressive, and I loved it for the most part, I'd definitely be lying if I told you that I didn't feel they went on for just a little bit too long. So I'm going to give A Woman Under the Influence a soft 9 out of 10. Yeah, this is a film that I absolutely adored. I thought it was impressive on so many different levels, but obviously the acting performance from Gena Rowlands was just out of this world fantastic. This is a film that I'm definitely going to be on the lookout for on Criterion, and it's a film that I'm going to remember and hold close to me for the rest of my life. So if you haven't seen this film, please check it out. I really don't think you're going to be disappointed. But anyways, that's all I got to say about A Woman Under the Influence. If you really enjoyed what I had to say about the film, please give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.